Welcome, everyone. We have our special guest here, Harmony, and also David. Thanks for joining us, Army.
Thanks for having me.
I really have enjoyed some of the interviews you've been doing on your channel, and I really like how you're going out there and finding, just new ways to play, different ways to play. Real interested in the Bronstein stuff that you've done. I've never done that. That'd be pretty interesting to play a game like that. And then just what game systems you're getting into, what game systems you're exploring. You say you're an advocate for women in gaming, so that's always a good thing. So I want to cover all that. And real quickly, let me kind of bring everyone up to speed about what we've been up to here over the last week. So since you last saw us, we played Vecna Chapter 2, and I really modified that a lot for the players and let them really drive the action, because that's another thing we're going to talk about today is emergent gameplay and really putting the players in the driver's seat. And so a lot of the, books that you can find out there in the world, they kind of have a real linear storyline, but you can always mine them for the stuff that's in them and use them and just let the players kind of drive how things go. And so the players there went and rescued someone very important from the clutches of Loth right before Loth was summoned. And that was a pretty fun session, I thought. Then I did the DM tips for that one that I shared on my website. 2024 D&D front, we got the Monk out preview, and we got the Sorcerer out preview. I did videos on both of those. I'll be interested to get your take on 2024 D&D, what you think of that, Harmony, when we get to talking about different game systems. Then Sochcanth, that is out, Tales from the Infinite Staircase. So I'm going to be running that this weekend, the second part of it. I ran the original one for Dave and some other players just about a couple months ago. And that was very interesting because that was a return to playing 1E style D&D. We're still playing 5th edition, but the adventure was 1st edition style. And so it really depended on the players taking command. And we'll talk about that a little bit too today. And then we got this awesome picture of Drelsna. And yeah, that's what we've been up to. So let's talk about Harmony. Some of your guests that you've had on. You've had a lot of cool guests. What have been some of your favorite recently? I'll do what you do to people.
Oh no,
who's your
this is
most
karma. I
favorite
deserve
guest?
this. I deserve this. My favorite guest I've had on. Oh boy, who have I had on? I've had Jeffro.
Jeffro, okay. I don't know much about Jeffro, but I've heard a lot of things. So
no, that was just wild. I've gotten so much pushback for that one. Oh right. I mean, I'm sorry. He's in chat. I meant Will. But I sorry, I was clearing my throat. It just sounds like right. I meant this FNGM Games. That guy.
Hey Will, thanks for joining us. I caught your guys' interview for Will. Crafty Matt's with us.
That's his cat. That is Timothy Dalton. He leaves his keyboard out, like he leaves his laptop out, and his cat just lays on his keyboard.
Hello, Crafty Matt. We got Ice 543 here. Hello. All right. So you had an interview with Richard Witters, was it yesterday?
Yeah. That one was great. Yeah.
Yeah, and you dug into some stuff I'm pretty interested in. Is like, what was the culture like there? Because I've noticed kind of a shift. It felt like the early 5e days were more old schoolish a little bit, if you could say that about 5e. But the newer 5e stuff is kind of diverging from that. And when we talk about the 2024 D&D, even more diverging from that. So what are your thoughts on that?
Personally, I don't care about 2024 D&D. I'm not going to buy it. I'm not going to play it. I think a lot of people just aren't going to buy it or play it. So I don't personally care what direction it goes in. At the end of the day, they can't control my game. There's nothing they can do to rip my player's handbook out of my hands and replace it with a new one. I don't particularly care. I mean, what are they going to do? Send the Pinkertons?
Ouch. Be careful what you wish for. Right. So I'm not super fond of the path it's taken. It feels like it's more and more candy to get players to sell the game.
So
I wanted it to be more like simplify a little bit more, not make more complex. And I really like the Shadow Dark game. I played that several times and got a lot of videos on that. And I really love the simplicity. But talking about going back, have you done any work or done any games? I think you have, back to like first edition D&D, second edition, any other editions?
Well, so I'm gonna start this question by going back to cover my ass a little bit here because I forgot that I have my own players on as a guest, and I'm just gonna say you guys are my favorite. But anyway, I tried to go with the interesting answer there. But anyway, as far as going back to old editions, yeah, I've played some AD&D recently. I'm actually exploring some classic games because I played some AD&D recently. I've played some Traveler recently. And I'm getting into what looks to be a long form AD&D campaign that's going to be starting up soon. But yeah, so I've kind of done a little bit of digging in a lot of places. I have been reading through Shadow Dark, and it seems quite nice. Like you said, a little bit simplified, but it seems like I'm guessing that you have a very narrow zone of simplification that you enjoy, because it seems like you're saying that the new D&D 2024 stuff looks like it's not simplified enough.
Yeah.
But Shadow Dark is too simple. So
Yeah. Yeah. I like fast gameplay that doesn't really bog down the players and too many things on their turn. I want their turns to come up fast and furious,
yeah,
and it's like, hey, I took my turn and oh my God, it's my turn again already. Versus, oh, we're waiting 20 minutes for, Joe to decide the 5 different character options he's going to use this turn. So yeah, I definitely do have a pretty narrow, although I'm trying other things, right? So I've played D&D since 79. Started with the Holmes edition of D&D, played first edition all the way to 1990 or 88, 89. Second edition to 1999, 2000, and then played third 3.5, played fourth, played a lot of fourth. And fourth kind of went down the path. I don't know if you played very much fourth, where it was like really hard to die.
I played a little bit of fourth. That
Yeah.
was about the time I actually got out of D&D because I've had a complicated relationship with it. I was in it for a while, and then I had a group that I just didn't mesh well with, and I quit in fourth edition thinking D&D is the problem. It's not that I have a bad group, it's D&D. And when I say bad group, we just didn't mesh well. But so I got out of it for a few years and got heavily into war games. War games. I say war games, but I've learned they're not war games. What I think of as war game is not a war game. But
What do you think of a war game?
so I was playing Twilight Imperium on an almost weekly basis.
Okay.
I've been told that is not a war game and I shouldn't call it one.
Yeah.
But yeah.
Crafty Max says it's ironic that people say 0e or 1e is complicated, but man, do player turns come up really quick. It's not that complicated. It's much quicker. You have one attack. High level fighters might get 2 or a little bit more than 1. So your turns are fast, super fast. And that's what I like. I like a game where you're in the action, you're taking your turn, and your turn comes right back around.
The 2024 system seems to have 2 directions that they seem to be going with the design. One is to ensure that players succeed as much as possible, their characters succeed as much as possible. And 2 is to continue with sort of the direction that we saw in 4th edition, where people get a lot of choices to make along the way, which is good in a way because choices are what make these games interesting, but it also tends to slow things down if there's a lot of choices and people aren't focused on making them quickly.
Yeah.
Analysis paralysis is definitely a problem, especially when you get to a point in an RPG where each player has 50 spells or moves at their disposal, especially if they're not paying attention before their turn comes around. It can get hectic quick.
Yeah. So let's talk about some of our subjects here. So allowing failure. That's something that can be hard for a newer DM and a newer players to understand. That can be really fun. It can be really fun when everything goes south for the party. So did you start out knowing that was how you wanted to play, or did that come around recently?
That's that's a good question. I'm not really sure. I've always found it. So I started out playing, not running games, like I think most people do, and I think I felt coddled. I felt patronized a bit when a DM would help us get through an encounter and make sure we won. I hated that more than anything. I was like, okay, well, what's the point? Why are we even playing? I don't treat me like a child. Let me fail. If I roll badly, I should fail. If I make bad decisions or bad moves, I should fail. And sometimes, if I'm not sure if a DM is willing to let me fail, I do like the worst thing possible. And I'm like, okay, all right, I'm going to intentionally make terrible moves to see if I am allowed to fail. Don't do that. It's bitchy. It's not the right way to play. I'm not advocating for this play style, but I have been known to be extremely stubborn at times when I'm not allowed to lose. But it's not only that. I think as a GM, you can make the game fit around player failure. If they lose a combat, that doesn't necessarily mean death. It can mean death, but it can also mean they get captured. It can mean that that some of them die and the party has to split and they have to rescue the hostages. Like, there's a lot of things it could mean. It could mean that someone gets a brain worm and ends up working against the rest of the party because they're controlled by an outside force. There's a lot of things you can do with player failure. And I think not molding the game around the player failure is a missed opportunity, because it's a video game mindset. The video game mindset is that the players must be able to beat this boss eventually. But really, with a tabletop role-playing game, you have the ability to mold the world, to make sure that the game will keep going, even if the players fail. And because it's just not limited by programming anymore, it's limited by your imagination. And I think not leveraging that is a missed opportunity.
Yeah, I think you said something really that I feel very similar to. You said you felt patronized when the DM, when it felt like they're just helping you through the encounter. And you can feel that as a player. And some DMs don't know that players can feel that, but that's why it's important, if you're a DM, to also be a player. You sit down at a table and you guys made a mistake. This battle should end with the party running for it and wiping out. And yet the DM just kind of takes the foot off the throttle and you get through, and it feels horrible. And so it's a tough thing to do as a DM, to just put your foot down on the throttle and see where it ends. But it can be fun, because amazingly, you see when you're playing, all these characters have amazing powers, even at very low hit points and with death. And they got Death Ward and they got Revivify. And so amazing things can happen in that area of gameplay that you normally don't ever see at a table.
Yeah, make them use it.
Yeah, let them use all those super powers that they have. It's a lot of fun to do that. So we're playing Shadow Dark a lot, and one author that we play a lot of adventures from is Source of Victory. Very fun adventures. They're like, death around every corner, horrible, terrible things happening in the adventures. You feel really cool when you overcome them, and you don't overcome them very often, but it's a lot of fun when you do. So that's a huge one. And another side of patronizing is, when I was young, I started playing when I was like 9, and I got the, Dungeon Master's Guide. It felt like I was kind of sneaking into the adults' world. They weren't talking down to me. I was a 9-year-old kid finding out all these cool things to do and to play. And it's like, I feel like we're doing a little bit too much talking down to the new players, and talking down to, like, they're treating them like little kids. And that might be counterproductive. What do you think on that?
Yeah, I don't think it prepares kids correctly.
Yeah.
I mean, if you just let kids win every game, then they don't learn how to lose. And that's a skill you acquire, is learning how to take losses in stride. That's why it's very important, I think, for kids to play some sort of competitive sport. When I was a kid, my competitive sport was debate team. And I lost a lot of debates. And I think learning how to lose when you're young is just, it's very, very important because, I mean, being a good loser is something that nobody likes. You're supposed to take it in stride, learn from your losses, and do better next time.
Yep.
It's not a big deal.
So advice to DMs, if you're afraid to let the players fail, don't be afraid. You might find a lot of fun there, I think.
But I think there's a point there that Harmony made, that it's okay to have a plan B when you've got some sort of setback that hits the party and seems to throw everything into a disaster. That's gold for, even narrative storytelling, for pulling that sort of twist where things get really exciting. It works that way in fiction, and it can work that way in games where they know maybe gave them a hand up to rescue the campaign, but they also know that they're going to have to bring a higher level of play to succeed.
Yeah. And you get to play different characters. Like you said, Harmony, that's an opportunity to bring in different characters to go rescue the first set, and maybe the first set, okay, I don't want to play them anymore because I like this character I was playing in the rescue mission.
I think every dungeon master dreams of running that set piece where the characters are imprisoned and they've got to escape. Well, the secret is you can't set that up. You can't plan for it because your players will sniff it out a mile away and hate you for it. But if that comes out organically, just steer right into it and enjoy it.
Yeah. Okay, so emergent gameplay. So letting players fail is one thing, then emergent gameplay is the other thing. I played a lot of Adventurers League. That's where you have basically you can go from campaign to campaign, bring your character, and you can play that character. But it really engenders, in at least the hardback books, that the party's got to go through the adventure as written, and they got to get to the result as written, because they're going to go to a different table, and it's expected that that's where they got. And so as I move away from that, and I take those same hardbacks and I look at what's there and just use it and let the players go where they want to go and do what they want to do, it's so much more fun for the DM, I feel.
Yeah. So I have mixed feelings on Adventurers League. On one hand, I think having a consistent rule set that you can take from game to game, where every GM is enforcing the rules equally, I think that's a good thing when it comes to game store play. However, the adventures as written with very little freedom to deviate from that is just the antithesis of what I feel that an RPG should be. It should be based around the players with their stories. And I mean, sometimes you end up with like some very weird things, but I personally use a lot of random tables. So the players will tell me what they want to do, and I'll roll some random encounters. If they're going to go fight some bears in a bear cave, then I'm going to roll what else is in that bear cave. I mean, there's random dungeon generation, random encounters to get there. And on the way there, they might have a random encounter that gets them off on a whole different journey. I tell this story quite frequently on streams, so I apologize, but I once had some players in a city run across a bunch of nobles. The encounter was nobles with strange rings that have like the insignia of a gang or something on them. I can't remember what that was. Maybe it was a cult. But so I described a bunch of nobles, and I said one of them has a little fluffy dog with them, and they're like, wait, what's the dog's name? And they get so fixated on this dog, and I'm trying to get them fixated on the rest of the encounter. And I told them he's not important. He's currently in training for the dog show. Don't worry about it. And they're like, dog show? There's a dog show? And so our whole next like couple game sessions was them preparing for the dog show, going to the dog show, entering their druid, entering their ranger's pet, entering they all had like things for the dog show. And of course, like it ended up not being a dog show. It was like a magical creature dog-like being show. And it was so much fun. We had We had a huge thing about it. I don't know. Yeah. This Ice was actually a player in that game. He had a Commodon, which is like a leopard snake creature named
Right.
Syrup, who came in second place
Syrup.
in the dog show. So I mean, you focus on the weird things that your players are interested in, and you'll end up with a game that they'll talk about for like years afterwards. Yeah, that's the point of that. That was my point, I think. I
Yeah.
hope that answered the question.
Yeah.
Do
No.
you have an approach for preparing for emergent gameplay in games?
I mean, yeah, you just don't. Like, so
You don't prepare?
not really.
Oh, okay.
So the prep for a campaign that I normally do is familiarize myself with random tables, be able to grab them quickly, roll them on the fly, familiarize myself with random dungeon generation for that system and that setting. Familiarize myself with some basic NPCs, encounters, stuff like that around, and kind of be able to look up things very quickly in the book if I need it. And basically, I think the best prep is book control and random tables. Learn to pull stuff quickly. Because if you're not prepped, if you don't have an adventure prepped in mind, then your players aren't going to be railroaded at all. Because a lot of times when I have newer players in my game who are used to a different style of game, they'll see a couple different quest hooks. They'll have a couple ideas of what they want to do. And then they'll look at me and say, what are you prepped for? Because they are being, what's the word? They're being considerate and wanting to do the adventure that I have prepped. But if I don't have a particular adventure prepped, and if I'm willing to run with whatever they want to do on the fly, then I mean, they're not railroaded into anything. They can do whatever they want then. They don't have to worry about what's prepped and what's not. And Crafty Matt in the chat has a good point. Yeah, read the rule book too. I kind of thought that was a given there, but you should be familiar with the rules of the system you're running, I believe.
Well, you are preparing to improvise, so that I think is an important approach. And I admire folks who are able to do that light of preparation.
Anyone can. I think anyone can do it.
Let me catch up on the chat a little bit. So Crafty Matt said, good point, David. When you're referring to all the different player options, I prefer choices of the game table during play, such as what path to take or how to take out the dragon. Player options is a false choice that adds too much complexity. And they're certainly adding more and more complexity with 5e. Another game system we've tried lately, Daggerheart, which we'll try again probably a couple more times. Oh my God, there are so many character reactions. It's like, it's crazy. We'll see if they tone it down a little bit. Have you tried Daggerheart at all?
No.
No.
I've that's the one that had the Powered by the Apocalypse initiative.
No.
No.
Yeah, no, that might have the initiative.
Okay, maybe.
When you started saying that, I was thinking Candela Obscura, which was.
Oh, I think you're right. I think I was thinking of that. I get those two mixed up.
I have not played that. It just seemed. I'm not a big fan of Powered by the Apocalypse, so I always have the idea that I want to try a game, but sometimes I just like, no, I don't even want to try it, and that was one of them, unfortunately. Let's see, another one, Crafty Nut said, especially when you consider that PCs will find the one, quote, player option that is OP and keep doing that round after round. And Triad Monk talks about this, about when there's one choice, there's no choices. Right? If there's one optimum thing to do, you're not really giving a choice. When a DM grants me an obvious gimme, I get so mad, especially as a generally forever GM. I don't want my limited chances to play be like that. It's cool I can fail and my character can die. Yeah, I like it. And then I can play the next character. That's right. Absolutely. Crafty Matt said, I started playing in 3rd grade. Older kids let me be the party torchbearer and play with them, but never talked down to me. Eventually, my torchbearer became a fighter. Yeah. I played with a group that was all my same age, and we had no idea what we were doing. We didn't know what the rules were. We just started having fun. And so never be afraid to jump in and play. That's another important point for all players out there. I love my 738 character backstock and will gladly perish to the dice. It's one of your players, right, Harmony?
I was muted. He's one of my players, yeah. So he's actually the other DM. I have a big campaign with two groups currently active in it, and he runs for one of the groups, and we keep our rule set the same so that the two groups can kind of compete in certain ways.
That's good.
But he also has the record for player who has died most in my games. he makes some decisions, and yeah, he likes making new characters all the time, so it's fine.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Crafty Matt says, my favorite was when the PCs entered a town, investigating disappearances and sacrifices to a dragon, only to find out that the town council was getting rid of undesirables for the greater good. And the big bad evil guy for that town was just in HOA. That's old person D&D humor right there. Dave was laughing like crazy.
Yeah.
I have an HOA.
Harmony, I read the fucking manual as well. I'm working on my no prep DMing. Yeah. Something definitely to put in your arsenal as a DM. And the converse of that, though, is you got to be careful. You don't want it. At least I've been to places where the DM was like, do whatever you want. And then it's a horrible game for a long time because they can't do what you do, Harmony, and have, random tables and have interesting stuff to follow up on and stuff like that. Because I hate playing a game where I spend hours and hours finding the adventure. I want to go on an adventure. That's why I'm showing up.
You can find an adventure about anywhere. And a lot of times, if I want to, sometimes I'll prep a dungeon, but I don't spend a whole lot of time on this stuff because the thing is, I could spend 6 hours on the coolest dungeon I've ever made, and if the players don't go, what's the point?
Yeah.
Really, I think if you do prep, you should prep things that the players want to do. So if they're in a city and they're getting a bunch of quest hooks, listen to them closely, figure out which ones they're preparing to go to soon, and start prepping then. You don't have to have a necromancer's lair prepped to say that there is a necromancer nearby town and it's a problem, right?
Mm-hmm.
A powerful DM's tip is to ask your players at the end of the session, here are your options. What do you want to do next week?
I used to do that. I don't do that anymore.
No?
I just, you can kind of tell by the way they talk what they're going to do. And when you can't tell, you just guess and hope. And if you're wrong, just pretend you weren't wrong and do it on the fly. And so you put a bunch of work into it. They won't know.
So now we have, in today's day and age, Discord and all sorts of other chat rooms and stuff like you can have. I think you were talking about one-to-one gaming a little bit and how you're getting a lot more interaction, during the week while you're prepping for the game. Mm-hmm. How has that been, and what started you on that journey doing one-to-one adventure?
So there was just a bunch of Twitter discourse around it, people saying that it works and that it doesn't work, and it seemed that a lot of people with opinions on it were people who had never tried it.
Yeah.
And the people who were pro one-to-one time had said, hey, you should try this because there are some non-obvious implications of this that you're not going to think of and you're going to realize when your players do it. And that's a convincing argument to me because I realize with game mechanics, a lot of times, if you do things as they were intended, instead of how you think they should be, sometimes you end up with consequences of that you wouldn't have thought of. Because sometimes these were written for a reason, and the rules end up being a certain way because of something that the reader is not going to pick up on just a cursory read through. So I tried it. I told my players, look, we're going to make this world together, and I don't know how this is going to go, but we are going to try one-to-one time with this game, and we're just going to see how it works. And I've had some interesting results. Right now, I'm kind of in a lull in it a little bit just because some of the players had stuff going on in the summer, but it's still going, and the world is still alive, and things are doing quite well. I started the campaign about 4 or 5 months ago, and it's going very well. So players are basically doing different things. Some of them have like a fog war going on. Some are committing crimes. Some are, I mean, and that's the thing. Like, if you do a pause time thing, you have like the rogue or the criminal of the group. Usually it's the rogue, let's be honest, who's saying like, hey, I'm going to, I want to commit crimes overnight, and you have to adjudicate that during the game. But like, you can definitely do it between games, and that way they don't even have to tell the other players that they're committing crimes. And of course, some players are training, some are fighting in the fighting pits, and some are doing rather interesting things with their downtime. Because the thing about downtime is you have like certain options they can pick, but they don't have to. They can always do something else, something that's not written in the book.
Yeah.
And
so to be clear about the one-to-one time, you're talking about one-to-one time, like calendar days, right?
Yeah, of course.
Okay. And did you like read up in it in the Dungeon Master's Guide, the first edition Dungeon Master's Guide, or
So
did that
the
come
first
from other sources?
The first edition Dungeon Master's Guide basically just has it as a downtime guideline. Like I think it says, this might not be verbatim, but I think it says one in the passage of time, the best way to do it is 1 day of actual time equals 1 day of game time. And it doesn't really elaborate on it a whole lot more than that. Not that I can recall anyway. So I had to look into other players or other people who have tried this to see what they did that did and didn't work. My campaign follows the calendar in my campaign worlds, all of them right now. I have 2 campaign worlds that I run. It is currently July 9th. All my players know that. There's no question. They can look at a calendar. And the big thing I like that it does is it allows you to have more than one group working in the same world. And also, if the entire world is turning, then things are happening in the campaign world at a reasonable pace. Like, for example, my players in one game are getting ready for an invasion of spider people. They know it's happening. They don't know exactly when, but see, I know it's happening in September. I just gave that away. It's okay.
Spoilers.
Yeah, they have like 2 months to get ready for that. And if they're not ready, they're probably going to die. It's going to be bad.
I think that's the most healthy. Sorry, go ahead, David.
Do you have an approach for dealing with the downtime with the players? Do you meet with them, email? How does that work?
The way I do it is I have separate little Discord channels for each player that they can basically record their downtime activities in. Sometimes it requires me to adjudicate them during the week, but most of the time the players can pretty well take care of it. For example, if a player is fighting in the fighting pit, they know the formula to roll for their opponent. So they can do that. They don't need me to help. But I have separate Discord channels where they can basically put their downtime activity in.
Does everybody have one character in the campaign?
At least.
At least.
At least one.
Well, you're laughing, but in that rule in the AD&D that Gary was talking about, everyone was playing a bunch of characters, and part of the reason for the downtime was that with the healing rules that they were using at the time, people needed days or weeks to recover after their dungeon expedition. So you would have to pick a different character from your quiver for next Saturday's game.
Yep. And we also have characters that are time jailed for traveling, characters who are doing several different things in the world, some of whom can't really do anything because they're doing something else. So, my players have usually 2 to 3 characters each. I even have a character in the world that I'm running because there are now 2 instances of it, or not 2 instances. There are 2 games that happen in the same world on the same timeline. And I don't DM one of them. One of my players DMs one of them. And I have a player character in it. So
that's
I did. It died actually, and now I don't.
That's a really healthy outlook too, is to just try it. Try it the way it's written, try it and see if you like it or not. Too many people, like you're saying, talk about it and form judgments about it and have never tried it.
Right.
And I've never done it, and now I'm interested. Now I'm interested in trying it sometime. Let me catch up on chat here a little bit. So FNGM says, prep makes being a trained DM very hard. Yeah, it's even worse than being a DM that plays on a VTT. You either need to prep all the terrain or prep very fast. Yeah. One thing, who is it? Ruinhammer talks about a lot is scatter terrain, right? So you have a lot of terrain pieces, but they're a little bit more abstract. You're not laying down every part of the dungeon that they're going through, but instead you're setting up obstacles here and there on the table. So that'd certainly be a way to use terrain much more fluidly. Crafty Matt says, when your players start taking downtime actions in between sessions, you know you have them hooked. When players want to run multiple PCs in a grand campaign, you really have one as a GM. Yeah.
It's fun. So sometimes they have to, if like one of their characters is in jail or something, they need to roll up a new one.
Yeah. Tree Monks here says hi to you, FNGM. One must find the time need for prep, and want to prep 1 or 2 sessions is good for me. Some DMs enjoy prepping, right?
Yeah.
I definitely enjoy parts of it. So you don't have to give up the parts you enjoy. Yeah. I got arrested one of the few times I was innocent during some big theft, probably.
One of the few times you were innocent.
Yeah. No, his character got arrested based on a misunderstanding. I don't arrest the criminals. I arrest the guys that were in the wrong place in the wrong time.
Yeah.
This
FNGM says offering some options, but not all, and letting them choose off the list gives a chance to stretch those adjudication muscles, get that game design skill going. Crafty Matt, the biggest misunderstanding of one-to-one times, that one-to-one time is that it only happens during downtime. It does not mean that if you leave town and takes an hour of travel, you must roleplay that hour. Yeah, sure.
Ouch, that would be harsh.
The dungeon's 4 hours away, guys. Sorry.
No, people, that's what people do, though.
Yeah.
I get that question every time I post about one-to-one time, almost without fail. I'll get somebody in the comments saying, either there's one of two. It's either, what if you end in a dungeon? Or what if you have to travel for 4 hours? Do you sit and wait for 4 hours until you get there? Those are the two most common misunderstandings. And
What if you do end in the dungeon?
You don't.
You don't. That's the way they used to do it. Yeah.
I mean, if you give your players a set of rules, they will adjust their play style to fit that set of rules. If they know that ending in a dungeon or in a dangerous place is a bad idea, they're not going to do that.
Yeah.
That's the answer. Like, they will, if they do that, they're going to make preparations in order to like take over a level of the dungeon and make and hire guards and stuff. That's what they need to do in order to end in a dungeon. But normally they get out at the end. Like they will adjust their play style is the answer in 99% of cases.
Crafty Matt says one-to-one time is a high dress game. Yeah. Ice 543 says I'm at 3 characters now, but one is dead. One is dead right now. The hardest thing about one-to-one time for me is we, by necessity, have short sessions. It's hard to get a lot done, and not hitting pause in the dungeon can be a pain point as a result. It would be a big difference if you played for 8 hours versus 1 hour.
Yeah, so I play my game sessions are 3 to 4 hours. I can't really speak to shorter sessions because I haven't done it. So I don't want to speak to something I haven't tried.
Of course, the system with faster action resolution would solve a lot of that. Are you playing 5e, Evan?
My one-to-one games are in 5e, yes.
5e one-to-one?
Yes. And it's so I also am very fast on combat. So we're usually able to get several of those in if it happens.
You know, one real interesting take on the whole one-to-one thing, if you look in the player's handbook, first edition player's handbook, I'll share this one and share it on the screen here.
Ooh, you have it up.
Yeah. Let's see. So there's some really interesting stuff in the back of this one where it's like all about prepping for the adventure. And so if you read Successful Adventures in the back of the first edition player's handbook, it talked a lot about planning ahead of time, making sure you had a goal for the session that you're going to do. You know, don't get sidetracked when you're doing the adventure. such that, you need to get in there, get your goal, and then get out. And if there's a new goal that you discover while you're there, plan that for the next session. So there was a lot. I mean, this all had to be done by phone too. They were doing a lot of planning for these adventures. And I wonder how much of this, we had Rob Kuntz on not too long ago. I wonder how much of that he did. I'd love to talk to him about that because it felt like he played a little bit more by the hip. We'll see. We'll see if he can share with us what his thoughts were there. So a lot more immersion in this is reality, right? And my character has to plan for this adventure versus nowadays, oftentimes it seems like players show up to be entertained and don't take a lot of ownership necessarily for the direction the campaign's going to go because they've been just kind of spoon fed the whole time of their whole adventuring careers.
Yeah. No, they have time in between sessions to prep for things.
Mm-hmm.
That's when they should do it. Wasting everyone's time with shopping sessions is lame.
I hate shopping sessions.
Yeah.
It's like, no.
Good DMs don't run shopping sessions there. I
Yeah.
said it.
Tree at Monk's Temple. I don't think I've ever played multiple characters in the same campaign. We had a fun one in 1 edition days where we played a set of characters, then played their offspring, their children, and then brought all of them together to go into the Hells. Dungeon Dragon Magazine 75, 76 was the issues that went to the Hells. So we played multiple characters in those campaigns. That was a lot of fun. This FNGM, not entirely. If an expedition takes 3 weeks in game time, then you have 3 weeks of sessions to complete the adventure. Okay.
Yeah. So what Crafty Matt is talking about, and he's explained this concept better than I can, is if you send your players on an expedition and you kind of fast forward through travel time. So let's say you don't roll many encounters. Then you can kind of just say, okay, you travel over here and you're there. And now basically they have time before the real world clock catches up to them. So you can do it that way. That is kind of a one-to-one cheat code. But I'm glad Will agrees that shopping sessions blow. Can I say blow? I don't know if I can say blow.
I think you say blow. I don't care
Okay.
what you
All
say.
right, cool.
Say anything you want.
So can I respond to something in the chat?
Yeah.
It's a little bit ahead of where you're
Go for
going. Yeah, so DM Greg is talking about how actually I misinterpreted him at first because he says he likes to use maps a lot.
Yeah.
You can put that on the screen if you want. He says, I like to use maps. It helps with player immersion and it gives them something interesting to look at. With the quality of modern maps, why not use a tavern, road, or manor map? No prep. I mean, so a lot of times in like 99% of cases, if I want to use a map, I can find it during the game and get it set up while the players are talking about where they go. But I mean, I always have like a tavern map or a road map ready to go.
Yeah.
But like that's something I prepped once and never used. So as far as no prep with maps, a lot of times, especially if it's like a map and you don't need to do anything to set it up in whatever VTT you're using, if you're using a VTT, you can usually do it during the game. If you're playing in real life, then I mean you can draw it out during the game, or you can get up an image during the game to show your players. Like definitely that's something that you can do during the game. I think like it really doesn't take much time at all. You can grab it off like Reddit, because Reddit has Reddit battle maps or Reddit D&D maps. Those are both good sources, but you just like look up what you want, look up a few keywords, grab it, import it to the VTT, easy, it's there.
Yeah.
It takes like 5 minutes.
Like you're saying, if you're playing in person, you just draw it. And if you're playing a Roll20, I can draw Roll20 maps. I mean, they're not pretty like the super artists can draw, but
no, you can definitely import that during the game. Like I've had my players go through like full dungeons that like I imported the map during the game. I prepped it during the game, and like if you do it right, like while your players are talking and discussing what to do, like you can pretty much keep ahead of them.
Yeah.
I mean, it takes a little bit of practice, though. It's not something that like you're good at right out of the gate. But yeah, it's doable.
Have you ever tried Advanced 5th Edition by In World?
I have not, no.
You have not?
So I read into it and it had a couple things I liked in it, but a couple things I didn't like, and I couldn't tell you what's what because it's
Yeah.
been a while. I just remember reading into it once.
Yeah. And that's what Will says. It's a little bit too Pathfinder 1 for him. Yeah, I feel the same way. I like it to keep it a little simple. I like a lot of variety, but not a lot of complexity, such that the turns take forever.
Yeah.
Yes, map is killer. I draw them in a whiteboard. Yeah. The party's going to be gone for 6 weeks on the calendar. Then you have a little bit of wiggle room for longer dungeon delves. That makes sense. So if you're going to play first edition Descent into the Depths of the Earth, where the party goes into the Underdark, and they're going to be gone for months, they can be in that adventure for months.
Yeah.
They just don't come out and do other adventures, in between. Makes sense. I think no prep works for theater of the mind, but if you use maps, prepping for all possible choices is unfeasible. Scatter terrain, draw it on the fly. I think you can kind of make it work.
Yeah,
It won't be
you
the
can
prettiest
totally make it
maps,
work.
but yeah.
There's a lot of the maps that on my flip catalog that I just use over and over again. The road, the tavern, the clearing, the magic circle. If you have like 5 or 6 maps, you can probably use them for 50% of the situations, though they might get a little tiresome, but some maps can be very versatile.
Yeah.
Yep. I agree. Also, you don't really need maps for everything. If there's no combat, you don't need a map.
Go ahead, David.
True. Yeah.
True. This FGM says, how do you determine how long they will be gone? Do they plan that in advance? I think they just are gone for as long as they're gone.
Yeah, you measure distance.
Yeah.
There are rules for wilderness travel.
Hex crawl takes 3 weeks to get out to the dungeon, 3 weeks back. Then they have 6 weeks to play with. Yeah. 6 weeks while other characters can do things during that time. If you play, so if they're gone for 6 weeks, but it only took you 2 sessions to play it, then all the other characters can be playing things during those 6 weeks, basically, right? This FNGM games you mark on the calendar when the party would be out adventuring. Yep. Mario the Evil. Won't go away.
Yeah, I mean, so I think prep is not something you need to do for like individual adventures or individual sessions, but I think for campaigns as a whole, you can really focus your prep time into prepping smarter and not like prepping certain adventures for the players that they may never do, but rather learning to get this stuff up on the fly, learning to be able to get things ready quickly. I think that's smarter prep than prepping specific adventures or locations.
Yeah, that makes sense. I remember when we'd play, on the table when we were teenagers, we'd hand draw the stuff while we were playing. And as a DM running games every week, creating all our own adventures, you take a lot of inspiration from the players. Oh, we lost Harmony. Let's go through the chat while Harmony tries to reconnect here. A5E is a great source to harvest from, but after years of playtesting, I recommend using it as a harvesting tool. Welcome back, Harmony.
Yeah, I don't know what happened there. My browser crashed.
Huh. Let's see. Treant Monk says, we're a little spoiled with fancy maps. Yeah, definitely spoiled. I seem to remember a Chessex map and overhead marker worked just fine. That's what we used all the time when I was a kid. All the time.
I was playing a game with a DM who was like trying to get a map up, and he's like, "Oh, I'm so sorry about the quality of this map and the tokens and stuff." And this guy was like, "Dude, we used to play this game with like doodles. What are you talking about? Like, the D&D is not a miniatures game. It's not a maps game. It's a game of your imagination, and that's just how RPGs are."
Yeah. DM Gray says, thing is, the quality of maps is so good now. Going with whiteboard stuff feels basic. Same reason I don't like dice and logos maps. So it does feel basic as a DM, but, as you alternate into being a player, I don't care necessarily. Yeah. Right? And so I got to remember that when I'm DMing. Oh, the players don't care that much. So why am I being...
Sorry.
No, go ahead.
Some of the best games I've played didn't have maps at all or tokens. Like, I mean, sometimes it's nice to have eye candy for the players, but you don't need it. You don't need it. You can
Mhm.
even run combat without it. Like, it's not that important.
Yeah, so I've played, plenty of eventually games, and one good thing that you want to be as a player is adaptable to what the DM's doing, right? And it's a different mindset. If you're a real tactical player and you want to know where everyone's at on the map and plan out your fireball just right, you got to kind of let that go when you're playing Theater of the Mind. Because I've had players play Theater of the Mind who try to stay tactical. They want to know where everyone is. The DM's having to describe everything over and over and over again when they could just
Mhm.
say, I'm going to cast my fireball against as many of the bad guys as I can. That's my turn. And
Yeah.
let the DM adjudicate that. Don't worry about it so much.
Right.
Yeah.
Focus
Game
on
will flow.
intention and
Game
not,
will flow still. Yeah.
try and picture the nuances, but
Yeah.
just communicate your
Mhm.
intention and let the DM figure it out.
Yeah. Okay,
Yeah.
so we talked a lot of what were we even talking about when we got off on this tangent? Oh, we were looking
I
at the
know,
chat.
right?
Let's talk about advocating. So there's a
Okay.
lot. We're going to talk a little bit about the drama currently, about some of the originators of the game. But what's the goal for us as DMs is to advocate for the games we love and bring in new players for the games we love. And so you've said you're a champion for doing that, advocating for more women gamers. What are
Yeah.
the kind of the things you do to bring in more
So,
new players?
yeah, I'm not sure if advocate is the right word. If I used it, like, yeah, all right, that's my bad. But I think that the best thing we can do to advocate for things like this is to do it in our home games. I invite, if there is a girl who comes within within a wide breadth of my group, I will invite her to play. Like, I try to get as many women gamers as I can in my game, partially because I like to see more of them, but mostly because it's a little bit lonely sometimes being the only girl in a guy's group. I don't want that. And so, I mean, I think advocacy is a strange word, because I think the most difference we can make is in our local communities and in our game groups, right? Like, I don't care about changing the culture in any other game group but my own, quite frankly.
Right.
Um,
So
yeah,
there's games out there that some people will be attracted to and some people won't. And if you enjoy playing that game, make that game shine. Make it the best
exactly.
game, the best version of that game you can make it, and invite everyone to play. Don't be prejudiced. Don't be, discriminatory. Let everyone come and play, and the people who enjoy it will come and play. That's what my feelings are as far as gaming goes. My games are always open. Well, no, not always open. When I have openings, they're open to everyone in my games, and
Yeah.
but then you do have to kind of weed people out by how they act, right? Their
Sure.
actions. That's where,
Gatekeeping in every individual
yeah,
game is important. You want a
yeah,
group that's going to get along with each other.
yeah. So Gary's taken lots of flack through the years, and is an easy target because he said some things in print that can definitely look
Mhm.
very bad. And
Sure.
you know, I think the most important thing is it didn't seem to me ever, as I was playing D&D in the years, that there was discrimination. I never felt like it was like, oh, keep those people out because they're a certain ancestry. Keep those people out because they're male or female. I never felt that when I was playing all those years from 1979 and on. And now people are going back and saying, oh, look how evil those people were back then. And that just feels so wrong to me. What are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, I personally think that if you think that the founders of the game that you play are evil, then it's probably time to find a different game. I also think that men and women have been clowning on each other since the dawn of time. Like, 50 years ago, what's the boomer joke? No offense if you're a boomer. But what's the boomer joke? Like, they joke about hating their wives. They joke about that wives joke about hating their husbands, how their husbands are lazy and useless and their wives are vapid and nagging, right? Like, this is something that has happened since the dawn of time. It really has. And honestly, I think people need to take a joke.
Mhm.
Men and women will always make jokes at each other's expenses. That's just how it is. And of course, the thing that's been going around recently, I don't know if you want to read the quote or not, but I mean, it's very obvious sarcasm. It's like mustache twirling villainous sarcasm. And to be honest, it's kind of funny.
Yeah.
Like that's how it is. Like, I mean, it's just men and women are just like that.
And to be judged
Women,
on something that's written down
right.
from 40 years ago,
Yeah,
I mean, that person said a lot of things, but you're
of
picking out one of
course.
the things they said and just lambasting over it. It's like, you could pick out a lot of things I've said. I would not look very good.
Right,
I hope.
right. Let's put up the worst
Yeah,
things I've ever said for
yeah,
everyone to judge my entire character on,
yeah,
or let's not judge each other by the worst things that we've ever said. That's
right.
stupid. Let's
Yeah,
judge each other by our actions, and we can judge Gary
correct.
Gygax by his actions.
Yeah,
He hired a lot of women at TSR, and I mean, I don't want to say there have been no complaints about Gary Gygax's treatment of women because I don't know that. But I mean, if we're talking about his words and not his actions, then I think there's a problem there because we live in the age of the internet now. I think all of us probably have something that we've said out there that we're not entirely proud of, and we wouldn't want our entire character to be judged by.
yeah.
And I think it's important to extend that courtesy to everyone. I thought we were like past this to the point where we live in a world where the worst things everyone said's out there. And so, yeah, I don't know.
Yeah.
Gary deserves some credit for evolving in his opinions and his viewpoints during his life. You know, he said some things to what he thought was a completely male audience of grognards early on. And over time, he turned into more of a welcoming guy who wanted to game with everybody. And I think it's to his credit that he evolved. He went on to hire Gene Wells, the first D&D designer for TSR, because he wanted another voice in that sort of clubhouse of all men that he had at the time. That didn't work out perfectly, but it wasn't because, you know, of Gene's talents or Gary's attitudes. He was really trying to change the hobby and broaden it as years went by. And I think it's a credit to him that, you know, that's about all we can ask for somebody is that they grow and develop as they mature and learn things during the course of their life. Not everybody does that. And that's sad when in that case.
David,
I agree with that. Yeah.
yeah, you did a good article, David, on Lee Gold. Do you want to kind of summarize that for us a little bit?
Right. Lee Gold was one of the foundational women and people in the role-playing game hobby. In 1975, she was introduced to role-playing games. She was a California science fiction fan, active in the California science fiction community, which was had a lot more women in it than the wargaming community over by Wisconsin. And she got hooked on D&D in 75, and she started running games. And she started a amateur press association. That was something where people would send in their articles, and she would collate them all together and send them out. And then she got them into retail stores and so on. And her Alarms and Excursions fanzine was vastly influential because everybody who was anybody, including Gary Gygax, was contributing articles on thoughts to this fanzine. As far as I know, she's still running it today. But back in the day, it was a who's who of people who are working in the role-playing game hobby and developing their thoughts on what it was. And she was at the head of it, making her just tremendously influential. So bringing this back to the subject we were discussing, at one time, Gary Gygax called Lee Gold to speak with her about something about role-playing, unknown what he wanted to talk to about at this point. But he was off-put because he expected to speak to a woman, and he expected to speak to a man, and he got a woman on the line, and she said, "I'm Lee Gold." and he was completely flummoxed, like the 13-year-old suddenly talking to the pretty girl at the dance. He seemed a little embarrassed because he was probably thinking back to that post he wrote with the sarcasm about being a sexist and saying some possibly unkind things about women war gamers. So it's kind of a comical ending, but I think that his being embarrassed by the post, apparently being embarrassed by what he'd written in the past, shows what I was talking about him evolving over time.
Yeah. And the quote that's making its rounds right now is from much earlier in that, by the way. So I mean, I don't put too much stock in it because I mean, clearly he has shown that he was supportive of women playing his game. So I don't really see the problem. I mean, he's changed since then. And like I said, it's it really just men and women clown on each other. That's just how it is. Like,
yep. Okay. Good points all. Let's talk about one last thing.
Mhm.
Harmony, you said you had found out about the D&D championship and that how you're going to win that one. And I said you had to come through me first. And so we had the D&D Open coming in Gen Con this year. I'm going to be playing in that. And what are your questions about the championship? What do you have in mind? What is it like? What do you think it might be like?
That was from a very weird Twitter phase that I went through.
Don't going through Tom. He always finishes second, so that first place is just
we
wide
won
open.
one. We won the what was it? DCC.
Yeah.
Championship.
So I just read that like there was a group that won a D&D tournament because their DM let them burrow around the cave and into the treasure room, and so they got the fastest time. And I was like, what is this? Is this really a competitive
This
thing?
is a real thing. We've tried ploys like that and unfortunately been shut down. I remember we had some super great plan that the DMs all had to get together and talk about. And they said, no, we can't let you do that. And so we played in the championship. I first met David playing in the D&D championship at Gen Con. God, I don't remember what year that was, David, 2005-ish?
That's about right,
maybe,
yeah.
2005. It's just a fun way to play, but it's different. It's not immersive, and it's not like you're playing a character to play a character. You're playing a character to win the championship, right? So you got to get through the encounters fast and avoid fighting things you don't need to fight to survive.
I think people play the game for all different reasons. That certainly is a play style. I don't really have much else to say about it.
Yep.
I don't want to laugh at you or anything. I actually think it's quite interesting, and I'd like to observe and or play it. Unfortunately, to my knowledge, I will not be at Gen Con this year. I don't know. I haven't been to Gen Con for several years. I kind of got out of it in around 2017, 2018, somewhere around there. So yeah, I probably won't be there to compete. So unfortunately, you can brag that Harmony Ginger is going to be a no-show for the tournament because of I just don't think I can beat you guys.
Don't want to compete.
No, I can't. You've scared me away. I'll tuck my tail between my legs.
You definitely got to try it. You got to try it someday. I think you'll enjoy it.
I might actually.
Yeah. Given that you're a war gamer, a little bit of a war gamer.
I'm not sure if I classify myself as a war gamer. I classify myself as just like a gamer, I guess. I don't know. I played a lot of board games, like really heavy board games, like Ameritrash board games that aren't quite war games, but aren't quite not war games. They're in kind of a gray area, kind of like Twilight Imperium, Diplomacy, Megasiv, and the 4X games. I played a lot of 4X. There we go. That's the word. And that's kind of my favorite style of board game, that and like the really light ones that are like code names and stuff. I love those too. But so I just like all sorts of different types of games. But I think war game's a bad descriptor because when people hear war game, they think like Warhammer or like a 1v1 skirmish. And I like the diplomacy of it too much to play 1v1 games.
Yeah. Okay. That's about our time, but Have we missed
Mhm.
anything you wanted to cover?
No, I thought you were gonna talk to me about my villain arc because I was a menace on Twitter today. So
Pushing some buttons on Twitter?
yeah,
Yeah.
I usually don't do that. I was bad on Twitter today.
Yeah. Well, as long as people can take a joke, I think we're okay.
I think we've
Hopefully,
determined that many people on Twitter
a
can't
lot of
take
people
a
can't
joke.
take a joke. No, that's true.
That's okay. It doesn't matter.
All right. Thank you very much, Harmony. Thank you so much for
Thanks.
coming on, and we look forward to seeing more of your work in the future.
All right, appreciate it.